Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the League Racing TV YouTube channel for what is the final round of the first season of the Esports Masters League League 1 division. My name is Aidan Carter, otherwise known as Carmentis. I'll be taking you through proceedings as per usual on a Wednesday evening, and joining me for the final time this season is Luke Etheridge. Luke, how are you doing this evening?
I'm very well, thanks, Aidan. Good evening to yourself. Good evening to everyone that is watching. We might not have a championship battle tonight, but Brazilian Grand Prix always seems to provide some good action. It's a fantastic circuit to end the season on, and there's always that bit of rain that could spice things up as well. It should be a fantastic race.
It really should be, yeah. Brazil does always provide some sort of chaos or carnage in terms of league racing. It's going to be a really fun race tonight. And like you mentioned, unfortunately, going into the final round, we don't have a championship battle. We did have a championship battle going into the final round after the Singapore race had finished a month ago, but a post-race penalty for M Shaw after a collision with Perpetuum Mobile put him down to third, having won that race on track, and that meant QVR took a 1-2 finish last time out with Verstappen and Campbell, and QVR are the League 1 division champions. So congratulations to QVR on picking up that championship. That means that all that fighting pretty much is over for the title. When further down, we've got new drivers in for the final round of the season. I think maybe preparing for next season when the format changes around a little bit. We've got more teams coming in. It's going to be interesting to see what these guys can do. So we'll just take you quickly through what the lineups are for each of the teams before we get ready for qualifying. Clean Vigor Racing running T1000 Zach and Julmel Matt. Julmel Matt new to the team, new to this league as well. T1000 Zach, he's back for the first time, I think, since Vietnam. He raced in the first couple of rounds of the season, hasn't really raced since. International Racing is Scooter Seb and Rudy. Head of Virtual Esports Racing is Shenda and Jules. OWR Esports Racing are Felgen and Daniel Nordboy. QVR Academy are running Cortez and B. Morgan. XL Racing are running XL Larkin and XL Dillon. Leonis are running Baby K and Jewel. Vapor Esports, unfortunately, will not be participating. As some of you may be aware, Vapor Esports has folded, unfortunately, which is such a shame to see, so they won't be participating tonight or in the future. TTG, the main team, are running Matt Tibos and Krishy, and the Academy team are running Noisy and Coreboy. So, a lot of new things to look out for tonight. I think especially as well, new drivers for QVR may be prepping for next season.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe just preparing things, like you said, trying out some different drivers. It's a good chance for them to see how things go. It's a good chance for the academy drivers as well if they want to be part of the main team next season. As far as I'm aware, you can obviously drive for both teams, but I think starting from next year, don't quote me on this, once you move up to the main team, you're pretty much committed yourself to that. But yeah, drivers obviously wanting to end the season on the high. We're coming towards the end of the game cycle, and there is still a bit of battling to go on, actually, with EML expanding to 3 divisions next year: Premier, League 1 and League 2. Leonis Academy, Virtual Esports Racing. Leonis are currently 4 points ahead of VER. Whichever one of those teams finish highest will be in League 1. Whichever one finishes lowest will be in League 2. So there is a little bit of intrigue between those teams.
Yeah, there's only 4 points between them at the moment. Leonis on 178, Virtual Esports Racing on 174. They're 6th and 7th in the standings. We'll run you through the rest of the standings. Obviously, as we've mentioned, Clean Vigor Racing winners on 327 points. XL Racing are in 2nd place, as they have been for pretty much the majority of the season. They've been in a close battle with TTG, but Perpetuum's incident with M Shaw has actually helped out XL quite nicely. There's a gap now between the two teams of 21 points, so it's going to take a poor race from XL and a great race of TTG for that to be overturned. International Racing Team are pretty much on their own in 4th place, guaranteed a 4th place finish. They're on 212 points. Clean Vigor Academy are 5th on 185. They're only 7 points clear of Leonis Academy. Vapor Esports are 8th on 131. They're 20 points clear of the TTG Academy team, and OWR Esports rounds off the points with 87 at the back. So that's a full run through going into the final round of the season, and seems the only battles are for that 5th place, 5th, 6th and 7th in the standings, and the possibility that TTG could be XL in the standings technically. But you've got to say that XL have had a pretty decent season, haven't they? For their first kind of main season as a team, it's been a really good run through for them, and they've been consistently up in the top 3 teams all the way through the season.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, you could argue that maybe they've not got the greatest strength of depth. I know some of the performances have been M-Short putting in some really good finishes, but they've generally got to the end of races. As soon as you get points as long as you finish, that is going to obviously help you out in a league like this one. So they'll be hoping to obviously secure that 2nd place as much as possible. I know you said before we started that Larkin and Dillon are pretty good around this circuit, so might even end the season on a bit of a high, showing that they'll be wanting to challenge for that championship next year. But TTG as well, they'll obviously be trying to sneak their way up into the top 3 teams if possible, with Chris and I believe, as I just try and look down the order, who else the other driver is for them? It's Chris and
Matt
Tibos.
Yeah, Matt Tibos, I believe. Yeah, he's obviously not running with the TTG name in front of him, but I think it's one of Matt Tibos' first races for TTG as well, so that'll be interesting to see what he can do. And yeah, like you mentioned, we're talking a little bit earlier on, Larkin and Dylan commentated over an event with them on Saturday, and they were both very strong around this track in changeable conditions. That's one thing to look out for. Looks like we've got a dry qualifying, but a wet race around here is pretty common, so look out for that in these conditions. It looks like T1000 Zach for QVR is going to be the first driver to take us through a lap around the Sao Paulo circuit, the Autodromo Carlos Pache. It's an absolutely brilliant circuit, this one. It's nice and simple, not too much to worry about in terms of traction zones. It's quite an easy circuit to run through. The gap in qualifying is going to be quite small. So here we go, on board with T1000 Zach as he heads into the center rest of the first 2 corners. A little bit of a lock up. Downhill he goes, and then into the second corner. Very easy to invalidate on the inside, but he gets away with it. Through Curva de Sol, and then onto the Reta Reposta, then the second of the 2 DRS straights we've got on this circuit. In towards turn 4, Decido del Lago, turns 4 and 5, down by the lake as he head downhill, and then back uphill for turns 6 and 7 of Ferradura and Laranja. Up the hill then, Matt Tibos unfortunately has left the session. Hopefully he's able to rejoin back. T1000 Zach through turn 6 and 7 nicely, a little bit cautious through turn 6 into turn 8, which doesn't have any name, into turn 9 of Perino. Downhill, very, very long hairpin. This one is easy to lose the traction on the end, as proven there by T1000 Zach. Loses the rear of the car just a little bit as he heads up in towards turn 10 of Bico Tapato. Down through Magulio in turn 11, easily flat in the dry conditions in the wet. That bites you into the final real corner of the track of Zhengzhou, turn 12. Got 3 more corners to go, but they're all easily flat up towards the line. Then he heads through turn 13 to turn 14, and then up towards turn 15 of the final corner. Then towards the line, the lap is over very quickly around this circuit, and across the line, T1000 Zach, his first time on the board, it's a 1 minute 6.6. Not a bad opening lap time, but it could be likely we could see people in the low 6s, possibly into the 5s, if they absolutely nail a lap.
Yeah, Jules has gone up into a 106.445. I definitely think Zach, he didn't really hug the left-hand side of the track, as you would ideally do around here for that straightest possible run. It's not going to give you the best run into turn 1, but it will give you the shortest run on your hot lap. XL Larkin goes up into second, Shender in third, so VAR 1-3, XL 2-4 at this moment in time. Time's coming through thick and fast. Yul Melmat, he goes fastest now for QVR. So everyone looking pretty close at this moment. Everyone keeping it fairly clean as well. No one's invalidated a lap. You do sometimes see some invalidations around here. Usually it is that turn 4, Decido del Lago can just catch you out on the exit, and you can see quite a few cars spin there towards the barrier. I've seen a few parked on the inside barriers of turn 4 and 5.
Yeah, really, really easy to do so. And in race conditions as well, it's easy to run side by side through there, but get it rolling up towards the line. Here comes Scuderia Seb. Crosses the line. He's only 8th for the time being. Oh my word, one of the QVR Academy cars parked at the top of the hill there right at the end of the lap. So Scuderia Seb nearly ran straight into the back of them, but just about got away with it. So it's Jules Melmat for QVR in his first race of the season up at the front of the field. Jules for Virtual Esports Racing at the top of the times. That's just beaten by Krishu, who's gone into second place in the TTG car. That is a good time from him. His first race of the season as well. So look out for him to be making an impression tonight. Then XL 4th and 6th at the moment for them in second place in the championship, as we've mentioned so far. More drivers crossing the line now. Ola Zach, I believe, has just crossed the line recently, gone P12 as well. Your Mats into the pit lane. Pretty much everyone's first laps are over and done with. It looks like B Morgan and Felgen are going for laps on their second lap on the same set of tyres, so Felgen's going to be the first of those two to complete a lap. Up towards the line he comes. Will he dive into the pit lane or will he continue on? Opens his DRS, is going to complete the lap. Felgen then up towards the line. Odiwar's performances have improved recently. He goes up into P12 on a 1 minute 7.2, just ahead of Elazat. B Morgan then up towards the line himself as well. He's gone to the right hand side of the track and then dived into the pit lane at the last moment, so he's not going to be completing that lap. Staying down in 17th. So far, of that battle for 6th and 7th between VAR and Leonis, it's advantage VAR, and we've got to say it, kind of a few rounds ago, LR's pace kind of has dropped off a little bit recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, LR, I feel like both of them, on their day, have had fantastic pace up there with the top teams in the top 3. It's just, for whatever reason, the consistency's not been there. I know, since I joined you, I think my first round was Silverstone. VAR we were always talking about them being brilliant in qualifying, and then they just have a bit of bad luck or get involved in incidents in the races and not quite put that same performance in. Whereas LR, again, when they've had Daniel, he's now, I believe, left the team. I think he's joined a Vortex Racing team. He's not there anymore. He was picking up a few wins for them, but at the moment, you've got to say it is advantage VER. 3rd and 5th position. Zach in 13th, second slowest of anyone that has set a time, but we're yet to see what Jules can do for the Leonis Academy. Of course, the Leonis main team, they only need a couple of points to secure the championship tonight, so it could be a double celebration for them.
It really could be, yeah. We'll see what they can pull off tonight, but it's going to have to be a stellar end to the qualifying session for LR to get up there with Virtual Esports Racing at the moment. Currently 3rd and 5th, so I think they're the highest placed joint team at the moment as it stands in terms of positions, because the gap between the QVR drivers at the moment and VR just slightly ahead of XL, so keep an eye out for that then. Jules coming close to starting his next run in qualifying them. We'll ride with the Leonis Academy driver, see what he can do. He's going for the longest run down towards the line so that he can build up as much straight line speed as possible in towards the center S, then keeping it to the right hand side of the track, trying to extend the corner as much as possible, square off the corner as much as he can. Keeps it in 4th through turn 1. We didn't see that from Zach. Zach was down into 3rd gear, but a lot more grip it seemed there for the Leonis car, so nice and comfortable through that first part. You've got to be careful actually coming out of turn 3 and down the retro posture on the inside with that pit exit. You can actually invalidate your lap time if you cut it just a little bit too much, a little bit wide coming out of the first part of Descida del Lago, but he gets away with it up the hill then. Let's see what he can continue to do, keeping in 6th this time round through turn 6 and 7. Again, just a little bit of understeer mid-corner for the car. Looks nice and stable to drive, but maybe it just isn't that fast in qualifying at the moment. As he heads through the middle part of the lap, then look for a mid 50-second time by the end of the second sector to be somewhat in the battle inside the top 10. Heads down through turn 11 up towards the end of the second sector. It's a 51-1. It's not the best we've seen so far as he heads out of Zhengzhou and up towards the line then. Might get a slight toe off the car in front, but he's a little bit far back. It's not going to gain really much from it up towards the line then. The number 21 car towards the line, currently 16th without a time, crosses the line and he goes only 15th. Slowest of the drivers so far, a 7.5, quite a way off, and you could just kind of see on board really with the Leonis driver that the car looked stable and easy to drive, just didn't really seem to be on edge.
Yeah, definitely. It's almost like if you use the default setups on this game, they're very stable, there's not too many dramas, but they're not quick. You really do need the cars to be on edge on this game to really have any chance of setting a quick lap time. It is quite a unique circuit with the layout, Sector 1 and Sector 3, all about pure straight line speed. Sector 2, very tight and twisted. There's really not too many medium speed corners apart from the, could argue, the Center S and then the Descida del Lago really being the main ones where you need the downforce on your car. We've got Morgan, he's heading towards the finish line now too, and his first valid lap in this session, and it is a 107.120 for the QVR Academy driver. Rudy there showing up as 3 minute 47 on my team. I think him and Matt Tibos are having a bit of connection issues.
Yeah, I've noticed out my end as well. Rudy has just unfortunately left the session. Matt Tibos has rejoined and left about 3 or 4 times so far, so it looks like they're not having the best of runs at the moment. Unfortunately, that is a shame, but TTG and International Racing Team kind of locked in 3rd and 4th in the standings at the moment. But even if something goes wrong for them, so not going to be too much of a detriment to the team. Yulma Matt did improve on his time to a 0.2, so he's now a 10th and a half clear at the front. Krishi's just improved his time ever so slightly, only by 15 thousandths of a second, but he solidifies that second place on the grid. Noisy for the TTG Academy team's gone P4. That's a pretty good time for them. The Academy team's not quite had the pace, as you would expect, compared to the main team, but still it's been a pretty decent season for them. They've had good, strong performances here and there. That could be their best qualifying at the season so far, if Noisy can hold on to that position. I don't think really anybody at the moment, apart from Felgen, is actually on a lap. Everyone's completed their second runs in qualifying. Felgen is 2.5 tenths up on his personal best. Could be ticking into the 6s, but as I say that, really poor run out of Zhengzhou, just on the power a little bit too early, loses the rear of the car, and that affects you all the way up the straight. Felgen's realised that and has dived back into the pit lane. And that's one thing about this track, because Shender's gone second now for Virtual Esports Racing on his second lap on that same set of tyres. This track, it's easy enough to drive, it's not a difficult circuit, but one minute error and it can cost you heaps of time around here.
Yeah, definitely. You do see them coming out of Yongzhou quite often because you're so determined to get it right. It's basically the entire final sector in the race. It's going to be where you're making your main overtake. It's at the end of the pit straight, and if you're just a bit too keen on the throttle out of Yongzhou, the car can spin you off. You can head up going onto the grass, and then the game's going to reset you into the middle of the track if that happens, no matter what. And that is a pretty scary experience, let me tell you, because you're never quite sure when you're going to stop ghosting.
Yeah, it's definitely a terrifying experience, like I said, to come out of Zhongshan and see a car parked in the middle of the road. It does happen more often than you would think. Like you say, T1000 Zach on his third run already in qualifying. That's another thing about this track. It is so short in time that you can actually get 4 runs in qualifying if you're quick enough with your ins and out laps. Zach then coming towards the end of his lap, then currently 9th on the grid at the moment. He's not up on his time, interestingly. So T1000 Zach started off the season really well with a podium in Australia, had a great race in Vietnam as well, working his way through from before qualifying. But it's just not really looking good for him at the moment so far in qualifying. Currently 9th on the grid with his teammate on pole position. Zach crosses the line, improves ever so slightly, but stays in 9th place. So far, a little bit of a split between the QVR drivers. Luckily for them, they've already wrapped up the title, so there's nothing really for them to fight for at the moment. Dylan has just started his next run, as has Larkin coming round to start his run too. Jules is also on a lap. He's currently 4th on the grid. And Virtual Esports Racing so far looking pretty confident up in 2nd and 4th. We mentioned it earlier on that they're strong in qualifying. This is even one of their stronger performances in qualifying so far.
Yeah, definitely. Normally they do get both their cars in and around the top 10. They're both in the top 5 at this moment in time, 2nd and 4th. So they'll be starting directly behind, Jules will be starting directly behind Shender. Jules just coming around this middle sector now, very tight and twisty through Pignorino again, just losing it on the throttle. It does look like a few of these drivers have gone for maybe a setup with a bit less downforce to be quicker in a straight line, which you are going to need if you want to do any overtakes. Despite that mistake, Jules is still improving, only by 100th of a second, so it's all going to be about how much power can he get down on this exit, how good can he get that final run through Young Sao. It looked nice and tidy enough. He'll hug the left-hand side of the track. In fact, he's done it too much and invalidated his lap. It wouldn't have been an improvement, but just shows he was pushing it a bit too hard there.
Yeah, easy to push the track limits around the track, like you mentioned. Dylan crosses the line. He's up into 5th place on a 1 minute 6.4, just behind Jules on the track. Noisy and Larkin are there on their runs. Larkin's invalidated, actually, in the early parts of the lap, so he's not going to be improving on that 7th place for the time being. Yulma Matt crossed the line, didn't improve on his pole time, but at the moment, at the front, still looks pretty secure. I think that's Rudy that's rejoined the lobby, crossed the line, and gone P9 with a 1 minute 6.6, so that's a good time from him. He's 2 places ahead of his international racing teammate Scuderia Seb, who's also on a lap at the moment in 11th place. We'll see what Scuderia Seb is able to manage. He's had some decent performances so far this season. He's finished up in the top 5 on a few occasions so far as well. He's one of the reasons why international racing have had such a swing in performance from the start towards the end of the championship. Remember, they were OSRL when we started on this game. Across the line, Scuderia Seb improves by a 10th, but stays in 11th place for the time being, just behind T1000 Zach and his teammate Rudy. So everyone's pretty much completed their their third runs in qualifying as well. It's just Daniel Nordboy and B Morgan at the moment that are currently on laps. B Morgan towards the line is nearly 3/10 of a second up on his personal best through the middle sector, crosses the line, goes into that P11 by 0.04 of a second ahead of Scuderia Seb. It just goes to show you how competitive is around Brazil. Yulma Matt looks comfortable in pole position, but he's only 4/10 clear of 10th place.
Yeah, you'd expect it to be that close around such a short circuit. It is one of the shortest permanent circuits on the game. And again, for QVR, it looks like their academy drivers are putting in a very respectable performance indeed. 8th for Cortez. We've seen him towards the front of the field battling with the QVR main team drivers. I think he was getting involved with Campbell and Verstappen at the Italian round. And Morgan in 11th place. Not a bad place to start. You do get that free choice of tyres, and that can be important around this circuit. If you start in the top 10 on the set of soft tyres, you might struggle to make a soft medium work. You might have to go for a soft hards, whereas if you're outside the top 10, you can bolt on a set of mediums at the start and then be lightning fast at the end of the race.
Yeah, you really can. It's kind of teetering on an edge around the circuit, like you mentioned, with tyre wear. It's all dependent on kind of your driving style, and it's hard to differentiate your driving style on this game. Like we mentioned earlier on, you kind of have to be aggressive around the circuit to really get the pace out of it. So, going to be a struggle for some drivers to make that soft medium strategy work. We'll wait and see. Every single car is in the pit lane, apart from Larkin, who's gone out early for his final run, so we'll ride with him, as he's the only person on track. Corboy's retired in the pit lane. Looks like he's given up on this qualifying session, currently in 15th place. That battle's still going on for 6th in the standings. Virtual Esports Racing, 2nd and 4th. Leonis Racing, 16th and 17th. It's not been a good qualifying, and it's kind of very reminiscent of what happened last time out at Singapore, where they were just kind of languishing, unfortunately, at the back end of the field.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if it stays like that, the main team might be winning the top division at the moment, but they'll be finishing with a League 2 place for the academy team, so that might not affect them too much in the grand scheme of things, but it would have given them a nice a little boost to get up into a higher division. XL Larkin, 500ths of a second faster through Sector 1, keeps it pretty much perfect through the first part of Desida de Largo there, getting on the curb just enough to widen the corner, but not enough that you start spinning your wheels up on the exit. Doesn't need to find much time to get near where his teammate is, and with Matt Tibos having his connection issues, XL looking very safe for that second place in the championship.
Yeah, not really a battle for them at the moment. Krishy is in front of him on the grid, but third compared to 5th and 7th is not that big of a points gain, and still XL will score more points than TTG if it remained like this in the race. 0.2 of a second he's found in the middle part of the lap as Larkin. It's been a very good middle sector, and he's getting a lovely toe off the back of his teammate Dylan up towards the line here. So we'll see where Larkin can go. Can he put himself maybe on the front row alongside Yulvermet up towards the line? Larkin crosses the line, he goes pole. That toe from Dylan made the difference. A 1:06.215, a brilliant final run from Larkin. It's now up to Yulvermet to respond to that. He's the man that's had pole for pretty much this entire session. Shender's already invalidated his next run in qualifying, and I don't think he's going to have enough fuel or time left to get another run in. So it's kind of really all down at this point to Yulvermet or maybe Jules, who's also looking pretty fast.
Yeah, and if I was the other teams watching this, if I was in a chat with the team managers, if I were the managers, you've got to be saying, get this slipstream working. It gained him about 1.5 tenths there. I'm surprised we haven't seen more teams go for it on that pit straight, especially if you've got like someone who you're fairly happy that set a lap time. But here we go, VER, obviously they can't do it. They're at two completely different parts of the track at the moment. Jules is going to get a slight slipstream from, I think it is Noisy, up ahead of him, doing a good job for TTML. And again, we saw this with his teammate Shender just hugging the left-hand side of the track too much. Jules has invalidated. He can theoretically do another lap, but he ain't going to have enough ERS to improve, really.
Now, and that lap would have put him ahead of Krishy only, and just behind his teammate is Dylan's now improved and gone P4 in the second XL car. So XL coming on strong at the end of qualifying. Yulmel Matt on a lap at the moment, nearly a 10th up in the first sector alone. It's been a great first sector from Yulmel Matt. Can he retake that pole position that he's held for pretty much the entire session then? Through the middle part of the lap, a little bit of a wobble coming out of Perino, but gets away with it in towards turn 10, down towards turn 11, then third gear through that corner, making sure he doesn't lose any wheel spin. Krishy's gone pole with a brilliant lap time, a 1:06 flat. That's come from absolutely nowhere. Right up there, he's gained nearly 0.4 of a second. That's a brilliant time, but Yulma Matt is absolutely flying in the middle part of the lap. It looks like he's likely to retake that pole position. Can he dip into the 1:05s towards the line? Not quite, but he does retake pole position, a 1:06.016 in the final qualifying lap of the session. Yulma Matt has retaken that pole position. Noisy and T1000 Zach, we've still got to keep an eye out on. Matt Tibos, I think, is on a lap as well, so we'll see what he can do. B. Morgan's retired from the session. Noisy has, I think, maybe backed off his lap. I think he made a mistake somewhere, so he's not going to be improving on his time. T1000 Zach can only manage 11th on the grid. Matt Tibos ends up 15th, so that is qualifying over. That was an absolutely brilliant end to qualifying session. He had a bit of a challenge at the end, but Yulma Matt did take that pole position that he held from pretty much the start of the session.
Yeah, fantastic lap from your Melmat, and I think what I've been worried about for maybe XL's point of view, I don't think TTG went for it. He did that without any slipstream. With a slipstream, he could have easily got into the 1:05s. His teammate Matt Tibos down, TTG Chris's teammate Matt Tibos down in 15th. I think Matt maybe just taking it a bit easier. If you only get one run, you don't want to invalidate. Hopefully his connection issues don't affect him, but all the cars on a 1:06. This could be a really close race, but it might be one of those that's a bit of a slow burner for the first third of the race just because of the DRS trains.
Yeah, they are very, very common around this circuit, so I have to wait and see how that plays out. I think we've got, I don't know if we've got, oh, there we go. That was just Rudy going into the pit lane, so we are officially over with the qualifying session then. That is it, and that was an absolutely brilliant qualifying session from Yulmel Matt. But interestingly, that's kind of the biggest split we've had in the QVR team this season in terms of qualifying. It's Yulmel Matt on pole by less than a 10th over Chris for TTG. Larkin in third with Shender in fourth. Top four different teams in the top four places. That is great to see. Dylan, the first repeat team member, in fifth ahead of Jules in sixth. Noisy seventh for the academy team of TTG. Rudy, Cortez and Zach round off the top 10. So a great final run from Zach. They were at the bottom end of the qualifying stack earlier on. They've managed to improve. T1000 Zach is the first person in that alternate strategy position alongside his academy teammate B. Morgan. Seb, Joel, Matt Tibos, Felgen, Nordboy and Corboy round off the 18 drivers we've got here tonight. That was a good improvement in the final run, but kind of went a little bit unnoticed for Leonis, so it puts them somewhat back into contention, but it's a little bit of a worry for them that VE are in 4th and 6th on the grid.
Yeah, I think Zach, though, he much rather would have been 11th on the grid than 10th, would have had that free tyre choice. I was on board with Scooter VSM, and he just slowed down in the final sector of the lap because I think he knew his improvement wasn't going to be enough to get him into the top 5 or 6, perhaps. So, would rather start a bit lower down on that alternate strategy. It is still dry, looks like similar weather conditions to qualifying, so hopefully we won't get a threat of rain at the start of the race. And judging by how slidey some of the cars were looking in the dry weather, I think they've definitely gone for full dry setup, so I'd be surprised if we do see any rain. Hopefully, because we haven't got a title battle, it should be a bit more of a nice, relaxed end to the season. We might see drivers just going to things at this moment in time, just thinking, you know what, we've got nothing to lose, let's put in a good show.
Yeah, putting a good show, like you say, to round off the season. We've got to keep an eye on that fight between Leonis and Virtual Esports Racing. But other than that, it's all to play for here tonight. Who can take the final win of the season? Could we see someone new winning? Or is it going to be QVR versus Excel versus TTG? As it has been pretty much for the full season, could we see Virtual Esports Racing get their first win of the season? That would be great to see. They've had a great season so far. They've just never really been able to hook up the races like they have done with qualifying, as we've mentioned a number of times this season. Let's have a look as well at the strategies outside the top 10. Pretty much everyone outside the top 10 has gone for the mediums, apart from Jewel for Leonis. He's gone on to a set of softs in 14th place. That's an interesting call. Leonis then splitting their strategies in case of maybe an early safety car, or just seeing which strategy is the better option.
Yeah, maybe a wise thing to do, splitting your, trying slightly different things. Zach is obviously on an older set of softs, I should say, and Jules on the fresh set of the soft tyres. He'll be hoping that he can get a good start for this race and get the moves done to get ahead of T1000 Zach for QVR, Morgan and Scuderia Seb in the first 2 laps of the race. Before the DRS gets activated, get yourself ahead of those medium runners, and you might have a pretty decent chance on those fresh soft tyres. This could turn out to be a pretty clever call from Jewel. We'll just have to wait and see how things pan out.
Yeah, this could be the difference between him doing the soft medium and doing the soft hard strategy. We'll have to wait and see. Qualifying doesn't really take a lot of life out of the soft compound tyres, but any life around this circuit in the soft compound tyres would be needed for this opening stint if you want to pull that soft medium strategy off. Then coming towards the end of the formation lap already, because it is such a quick lap. Before we get going for the final round of the season though, Luke, who was your bet for race victory today?
Yeah, Joel Melmat looked very good in qualifying, and when he had to push something extra, he seemed to find it. So I think QVR are going to end the season on a high with a win.
Okay, we'll go for John Matt then for the race victory. I'm going to go for something different. I'm going to say Chris for TTG is going to win in the final race. That would be great to see TTG pick up a victory at the end of the season as well. Excel still right in the battle in 3rd and 5th. Virtually Esports Racing right up there as well. Don't count out those people on those medium tyres. The alternate strategy could pay dividends for them in this race. Here we go then for the final round of the season. The lights are coming on ahead of the drivers. It's Yulmel Matt versus Krishy. 2 newbies to EML on the front row. Lights are out and away they go. And it looks a fairly even start. In fact, have got an even better start on the inside. In fact, Virtual Esports Racing driver there of Shender, I think, has had a brilliant start. He's already passed Larkin. Larkin's not had a great start to this race. A little bit of contact there between Yulma Matt and Chris, and that's going to allow Shender to go around the outside. Shender with a brilliant start, but there's contact with Chris, and Chris forces him into the barrier, coming down the back straight. Down the back straight towards turn 4. There is contact between the drivers running 2nd and 3rd. Chris has managed to get away with it. He's got damage, but he is not out of this race. Shender, with a brilliant start, was looking for 2nd place. Chris just ran him out of road.
Yeah, I think maybe to give Chris the benefit of the doubt, I think he didn't realise that Shender had that much of his car alongside him, and I think he thought that he had this clear space, just pushed him off the circuit, and the barrier nips in at that point as well. That took Shender out. Very lucky for Chris that it didn't take him out, but a scrappy start to the race, and any chances that TTG had of getting 3rd place, 2nd place I should say, in the championship might have just gone out the window. And that fantastic qualifying, that fantastic start that VER had, one of their drivers is out of the race, and Leonis Academy are now fighting with 2 for that all-important 6th position, so that could be a very crucial retirement.
It really could, yeah. We'll have to see what Leonis can make of this situation now then, as we are back going after that virtual safety car period. It's Yulma Matt that leads the way. Dylan's ended up jumping into 2nd place from 5th on the grid, so he's had a brilliant start and has capitalised nicely on all of that carnage going on around him. Larkin, in the other XL car did not have a good start from third on the grid, has dropped to fourth place, and that's with 2 retirements or drivers in front of him. So not been a good start to the race for Larkin so far. Then further down, Noisy up into the top 5 for the Academy team of TTG. That's a good drive from him as well. The first driver on that medium compound tyre is T1000 Zach in 9th place. So keep an eye on that. Matt Tibos in the other TTG car has had a pretty decent start from the very back of the grid. He's into 11th place and is challenging T1000 Zach already for that 9th place on the road. So we'll keep an eye on that. Krishy is in the pit lane replacing that front wing, and the timing screens will sort themselves out once he is back through the first sector. Then Your Man Matt leads the way, Dylan in 2nd place from Jules in 3rd, and already a little bit of a gap forming between the top 6 cars and Zach in 7th.
Yeah, man, that could be crucial, of course, if these top 6 are allowed to get away. DRS will be activated this time. First time they'll be able to use it is on the back straight on the Retta Raposta, but Yul Malma, he didn't have a great start to this race, and Chris sort of had a half a chance of getting down the inside, wasn't able to make it work in the end. There was that tiny bit of contact between Yul Malma and Chris, and that then had the after effect with Shinder getting involved with the TTG driver and taking him out of this race. But Yul Malma's recovered from that less than ideal start, 6 tenths ahead at the moment, and Dylan up there was about 9 tenths ahead of Jules. So if those two could break away, that would be good news for their chances, and would probably mean Larkin would have half a chance of getting ahead of Jules. But we've not really got much of a DRS train, as there we go, Rudy has got past LR Zach, and what you said's happening, what you said might happen has happened. Those top 6 have broken away from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, already a gap starting to form. Then Rudy up into that 7th place for the International Racing Team. LR losing a place then after a pretty decent start for Zach, actually, from 10th on the grid. Was up into 7th, has dropped back behind Rudy, who did start ahead of him. And now he's got the medium runners behind. The gap in pace between the softs and the mediums around this track is not that big, because there's not a lot, really, of high-speed corners. And a lot of the low-speed corners, you're only really losing a little bit on traction on the exit. So it's going to be pretty easy for the likes of Zach and Matt Tibos to keep up. In fact, Matt Tibos doing a really nice job in 10th place, sticking to the back of the QVR driver in front of him. Yulma Matt leads the way still. It's still 4 tenths of a second. DRS is now enabled, and we'll see if Dylan is close enough coming down the back straight towards turn 4. Is he close enough? He's not going to be close enough this time around. You've got to be within really 3 tenths of a second and using a lot of DRS to get the move done in towards turn 4. Jules has held DRS for the time being. That big gap is between 6th and 7th place. Cortez once again for the Academy team right up there in 6th place.
Yeah, doing a fantastic job at the moment, just hanging on the back of these drivers. He might be one to watch out for. Not quite yet, but maybe around about lap 10, lap 11. Try something different. Pit a bit earlier on, put a set of hard tyres on and try to get that undercut working. You will come out in a lot of free air. There is some battling further down the field. Felgen and Jules really not had the start he would have wanted on those soft tyres. If anything, he's lost a position, and when you consider 2 drivers ahead of him had pitted, that is less than ideal, and I think he's really finding himself getting stuck behind Felgen at this moment in time. Not looking good for LR. They've struggled with pace in these first couple of laps.
Yeah, he had a big side there. It was all Coreboys gone off the road behind him. I wondered if there was a little bit of contact from behind. It looks like there might have been. Coreboys been off the road and continued. Just not got any damage, but that's him off the back of the queue. It's, yeah, not been a good start for LR. And Jewel, unfortunately, already derating in 15th place at the very back of the queue. So that strategy so far not working whatsoever. Zach a little bit earlier on as well was the cork in the bottle when he's got the medium runners right up behind him. At the front of the field, it's now Noisy that's starting to lose a little bit of time in 5th place. He's dropping out of DRS range to Larkin. We've already mentioned that DRS is incredibly important around this track to be able to keep up with the cars in front. Pretty much half this track is a DRS straight, so it's going to be important to stay in that gap, and I think Rudy is proving that. Rudy got past Zach with relative ease, and now he's behind Cortez, catches him in the middle sector, and then immediately loses 3 tenths through the final one in the first sector. Yeah,
and also we saw the pace he had to get ahead of Zach. He's pulling away slightly, but if Zach just manages to stay in DRS range, he should find it okay. He might just drop out on this occasion, which might even give T1000 Zach and Matt Tibos a chance to close off. In fact, Matt's had a pretty good exit out of Young Sal there. He's going to be getting close to the back of T1000 Zach. Don't think he's quite going to be close enough, though, to go for a move. It might be a bit of a late dive from the TTG driver. He's thinking about it down the inside. And yeah, that wasn't really on enough, I don't think. Zach wasn't expecting that, covered it off. Tiny bit of contact between the two of them, but Matt just losing a lot of momentum. And it just shows DRS is important around here. And once you get in a train, it doesn't really matter how good of an exit you get, you are going to find it difficult to overtake.
Yeah, you are definitely going to find it difficult. I think Matt Tibbles there, I don't even think he expected to go for that move. It was a little bit of a late lunge for him, bit of a half-hearted lunge, so Zach was fully entitled to turn into turn 1 there. Matt Tibbles and Zach get away with it for the time being. They remain the lead medium runners with B. Morgan, the other QVR Academy car, right behind as well. They've managed to drop Scooter Riz Seb ever so slightly, who's not having the best of time on the medium tyres. He's dropped the OWR drivers low behind, so he's not got any pressure from the two in 13th and 14th as it stands. Noisy has now dropped completely out of DRS range to Larkin in front. That might put Cortez on the back, and again, Rudy just losing 3/10 a lap at this point in the race because of that lack of DRS. And amazingly, Zach has actually managed to get back within DRS range. T1000 Zach has lost DRS range. Here comes Matt Tibbles this side towards turn 1. No contest. Without the DRS this time around, Zach just has no defence against the TTG driver.
Yeah, we saw that coming for the last couple of laps. Matt actually had problems in qualifying. He didn't have any vibration, so I wonder if that's come back in the race, and that's why we are seeing a bit more pace from him. We get the first penalty of the race. That is for Daniel Nordby. 13th place for OWR. His teammate not too far behind him, so as long as they get to the end, they'll get some points, and they've definitely had some good learning from this season, I think, ahead of next year. I said I didn't think we were going to see any rain. Those clouds are coming in thick and fast at the moment. It is very overcast all of a sudden here in Sao Paulo.
I was actually just going to mention that myself as well. I hadn't seen any note that it was going to rain, but it has, in the last lap, completely clouded over. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that and see if any rain does come. If it does come, that's going to be really interesting for these guys that are running the soft compound tyres at this point in time. If it does come, will the rain come in time for them to make their pit stop onto a set of intermediates? Or will those have to, on the mediums, be on the better strategy? Larkin here, going for a run on Jules, up for third place, is going to look to the outside line of the corner. Is going to be the long way around, it'll be the inside for turn 2, but Jules firmly shuts the door in his face, as he's entitled to the third place for the time being. Jules has managed to close back into the back of Dylan as well. So it's a four-way battle for the lead at the moment. You've got to say, though, it looks like the XL drivers may be the faster of the guys at the moment. Larkin able to stick to the back of the Jules very easily. Dylan sticking to the back of Yulmel Matt nicely as well, with much more ERS in his back pocket.
Yeah, I was just about to say, Yul Malmat was derating at the end of the Retro Poster. Likewise with Jules, Dylan and Larkin got plenty more ERS, so I think that's why Larkin was able to get close despite being in this train and the car ahead of him having the DRS. Interestingly, Cortez and Noisy, they've got no problems from behind them. 2.8 seconds back from Cortez to Rudy. Noisy's not got the DRS, but it's not like the QVR Academy driver's really putting him under any pressure at this moment in time. That gap just staying at about 0.8 of a second, whether he is starting to struggle on his tyres. And I am now wondering, when we saw Jewel early on go for the soft tyres, was that because he was expecting it to rain fairly early on? As I think Larkin's going around the outside again. He's got a lot more of his car alongside this time, and again it's going to get a bit tight on the exit. I think it's like Albon and Vettel in 2019. The last time we were at Interlagos, that might have dropped Jules outside of DRS range. He was just inside at the detection point. Can Larkin go all the way around the outside at the Destino de Largo? That one is not going to work. But now that Jules is outside of DRS range, you feel like it's a matter of when, not if, he gets ahead.
Yeah, that is actually going to help Larkin out in the long run now that it's going to be much easier, and especially with Jules derating already in the middle part of the lap. That has brought Noisy back into it now as well. Noisy back within DRS range almost of Larkin in front. That just goes to show that even a slight bit of battling and he can lose quite a bit of time. Jules was very aggressive in his defence this time around, coming out of turns 1 and turn 2. I think it was just teetering on the edge, but they got away with it. Jules held on to third, but it's only going to cost him in the long run now as they come through Zheng Shao. How close is Larkin this time around? He gets great traction out of turn 12. He's immediately on the overtake. Red lights flash on the back of that Virtual Esports Racing car in front pretty shortly. In fact, Larkin might be passed before he even derates. This time around, without DRS for Jules, it's easy for Larkin as he just breezes around the outside and up into third place. Now his task is to try and close back in on his teammate and get within DRS range so that he can continue the fight for the lead. But Dylan has lost a little bit of time on this previous lap. So Yulmel Matt, he's used up his ERS, I think, trying to get back within range. But interestingly, with less ERS, Yulmel Matt on the previous 2 laps starting to pull a bit of a gap on Dylan.
Yeah, maybe Dylan did just make a small mistake somewhere, whether he's cooked his tyres a bit more in the dirty air. I'm not sure, because you would have expected him to be able to just breeze past whenever he wanted. It was almost like he was choosing to stay behind Yulmel Matt at that time. But yeah, nearly outside of the DRS range now, which would be a big help for the QVR driver at the front of this field. Noisy's just dropped outside of the of the DRS range again. But for the TTG Academy driver, he's doing a very respectable job at the moment. In 5th place, kept it nice and clean. No penalties as of yet for him. It's only Zach and Daniel Nordby that have got the penalties. And yeah, Noisy, if there's any contact up ahead, you never know, might have a slight chance of getting a podium for the Academy team.
Yeah, anything could come of this. That has been a good run for him so far, as with Cortez as well. Further down, one thing to note here, Matt Tibos was able to catch up to Zach very quickly, but unfortunately for Matt Tibos, Zach is within DRS range of Rudy in front, so this second queue of cars at the moment for 7th place means that Matt Tibos is a little bit stuck on those medium tyres, but it does look like the medium tyres are the faster choice at this point in the race. Scooter Recep has been able to re-catch the drivers in front, so look out for when the soft runners come in. The soft runners will be coming in the next couple of laps or so. If it were to be a full dry race, you could see people in around lap 12 or 13 for a set of hards, maybe for a set of medium compound tyres if they think they can get them to the end, but it has clouded over so much at this point. And there we go, there's the rain. It's just started spitting with rain, actually. I was just about to talk about it. The rain's starting to come down. Now it all depends for the soft runners how quickly this rain falls. If it doesn't fall quick enough or hard enough, then I have to pit for another set of dries to avoid a puncture.
Oh, times like this, I wish we had the test system here in League One. They've got it in Premier, but that would tell us the track temperature, and that is a massive decider as to how long does it come before the change-on point. Matt Tibos and Zach have made contact. They're off onto the grass there. They're both going to lose absolute chunks of time. 11th place for Matt Tibos. Zach's dropping even further down the order. Zach gets a 10-second penalty for exceeding track limits, which seems exceedingly harsh there. It's not like he gained any time from that, but being on those old soft tyres in these conditions is going to be extremely difficult. And Zach, in fact, come into the pits. I wonder if this is to retire, because even with a bit of damage, indeed it is to retire, even with a bit of damage, it wouldn't have been dry enough, wet enough even, for the intermediate tyres, and putting on another set of dries would have just been a waste of the pit stop. So we have got our first retirement, and I think that, second retirement, sorry, and I think that pretty much doesn't quite confirm it yet, that VAR will finish ahead of well, that might confirm it, actually, because LR Jules spun and damaged this front wing, so definitely looking good for VAR to finish ahead of Leonis Academy.
Definitely looks like that at this point in time. I think Jules just has to finish the race at this point to try and get those positions. They are behind at the moment in the standings, I think by 7 points, so keep an eye on that. Jules just kind of has to finish where he is at the moment. The rain is coming down pretty heavy. We're not on the intermediate conditions just yet, though. People are staying out for the time being. Actually, Jules is into the pit lane. That's an earlier pit stop than everyone else around him. No one has followed him in. A bit of a speeding in the pit lane. Cortez actually has followed him in. So Jules and Cortez, the first of the leaders to come in. Rudy T1000, that they're all coming in. So I'm wondering now, is now the time to switch over and have the top 4 been caught out by staying out a lap longer?
Someone who's definitely been caught out, XL Larkin. He's going to have to either go a lap longer, which looks like a very silly thing to do at the moment, or stick behind his teammate and double stack and lose time, possibly too noisy as well. But Jules, despite getting that 5-second penalty, might have just called that right, because the game did say intermediate tyre conditions. DRS is still enabled, but looking at the we're going to have to look at the deltas now between some of these cars to see how they do. And Jules, he's catching Daniel Nordby hand over fist. He was 3.5 seconds behind going into the Decido de Largo. He's now about 2.5 seconds behind. And there we go, DRS disabled. This could be an opportunity for Jules to maybe take VAR's first win of the season. They will have to come into the pits again. These intermediates aren't going to last 24 laps.
No, that's going to be... If anyone can make those intermediates last, that would be an incredible feat. But yeah, they're going to have to pit again at this point. Jules has already passed Daniel. That's how quickly he's caught up. The pace difference. Yulmo Matt sped into the pit lane. That's interesting. Our race leader has sped. Larkin has also sped into the pit lane. Noisy and Dylan, the only ones that didn't of those front 4. That is crucial as well for Jules, that 2 drivers around him have also sped into the pits. It's wet and very quickly will ride with Jules as he heads towards turn 1. Where is he going to be relative to Yulmel Matt? He was about 3 seconds behind Yulmel Matt when they came into the pit lane. He's already jumped the 2 XL cars. It's going to be very close on the way out of the pit lane. I think Yulmel Matt might just hold on to it on track, but Jules has managed to throw himself up into second place with an earlier pit stop. Cortez as well is going to be very close on the exit of the pit lane to Dylan. Dylan's actually been jumped by Larkin by the looks of things. Larkin's ahead of Dylan now. Dylan behind, and Cortez right up behind him as well.
Yeah, of course. Importantly, and what something I forgot about is they're in the multiplayer cars. Just because the XL are teammates for the purposes of EML, they might not be in-game teammates. So whether Dylan maybe even got caught in the double stack behind Yul Malmat, that could have been what happened for him, which has been a bit of a nightmare and a bit unlucky for that to happen for him. But he's kept it clean. He didn't get a pit lane speeding penalty. The 3 cars ahead of him has, so that might change things if they need to come into the pits again. We might see wet tyres, we might see it dry up at the end of the race. We're not quite sure what could end up happening here as Chris gets himself a 3-second time penalty. It's safe to say, though, I think one of the biggest winners in that period has to be Jules. Gained 3 places, fairly close to the back of Jon Malmat. Is he going to be able to get close enough to overtake? And if there is another weather change, will he call it right second time round?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting now because, well, without DRS now, with a lack of real traction coming out of some of these corners, it's going to be a lot more difficult to overtake unless you have a major pace advantage. All of our top 3 with a speeding penalty. Dylan now in a pound seat without that penalty is further down the field. I think Jules had another spin. He now drops to last of the runners in 16th place. Jules up in second. Really going Virtual Esports Racing's way tonight at the moment. Can Jules get any closer to the back of Yul Malmat? Can these top 3 pull away from the rest of the field to null the effects of their penalty? But if they do have to pit again, they'll have to serve that in the pit lane anyway. So Dylan's got to try and keep close to the back of his teammate and the drivers at front to capitalise if they pit for a second time. We'll run you through the rest of the order in the top 10. Then Noisy pitted on the same lap as our top 3. He's in 6th place. He's dropped behind Cortez, but he remains right up there in the top 6. T1000 Zach has benefited nicely from that pit stop phase. He's up into 7th place ahead of B Morgan in the QVR Academy team. Rudy's dropped behind the pair of them into 9th. Matt Tibos, despite the spin, has managed to actually get himself back inside the top 10 in the pit stop phase. So not too much loss for Matt Tibos, although it could have been him in that 7th position. He was ahead of T1000 Zach before his spin anyway. So a little bit of a shuffle round now, and now it completely depends on what people have done setup wise. Did people go for a full dry setup, or did people go for something that was more tailored to the wet conditions? By the pace that we saw from the likes of Yulmel, Matt, Larkin, Dylan, all that in qualifying, you've got to say they went for something that was nearly a completely dry setup.
Yeah, I wonder if they, judging by when the rain came, but I wonder if the game said dry at 20 minutes, but then wet at 45 in qualifying, because you never know when it's going to come, and the game always seems to predict that the rain will come, and in reality it's about 5 or 6 laps earlier than what the game actually predicts. So it wouldn't surprise me if the game only said rain for plus 45 minutes, but that can be anything from 21 to 45, and then it has come even earlier than that. So I think there's quite a few cars here on drier setups, maybe even Jules, because Yul Malmat has pulled out about a second in the last lap. Yul Malmat, did he get pole position on a bit more of a compromised setup? He did look to be looking after his tyres a bit more in that first stint, and maybe that's an indication of just a bit more downforce. He's looking very good at this moment in time. Dylan, he was dropping back from Larkin. He just seems to have kept that gap now around about 3.5 seconds, so not struggling quite as much as he was initially when he came out of the pits. Another good performance possibly on here for XL, and if Dylan can get closer, maybe even a win.
Yeah, it could definitely be possible. Larkin is closing in nicely onto the back of Jules as well. That gap was about 2 seconds a lap and a half ago. It's now under a second. It's 0.7 of a second as he heads into turn 1. So Larkin, famed for being very fast in the wet conditions. I've commentated on many races in the past where Larkin has excelled, no pun intended, in the wet conditions. So look out for him in this race, Dylan, as well. Cortez has dropped off the back of Dylan a little bit in that 5th place, but still a top 5 for Cortez in the Academy team could be a great result. Noisy there in 6th. T1000 Zach, though, is catching these guys at a vast rate of knots. I'm wondering whether T1000 Zach, this may explain his qualifying performance, only 11th on the grid. You'd expect more from someone who was on the podium, in the podium positions in the opening 2 rounds of the season. Up in 7th place, maybe has gone for a bit of a wetter setup.
Yeah, definitely. I think if this was a circuit you felt like you struggled about, it'd be worth going for that wetter setup, because you'd get more confidence in the car with a downforce. Yes, you'll be slower in a straight line, and you do better when the rain does eventually come. You're feeling nice and steady. Not got himself any penalties so far. As I'm just gonna, most of the penalties on the field are for pit lane speeding penalties. I think everyone's but 3 seconds of Nordby and Chris's and 3 seconds for Jewel are 5-second pit lane speeding penalties, and it is quite a tricky pit lane entry here. It's quite high speed going in, especially once the circuit's had a nice little layer of water on, just to make it that even bit more tricky. The way Yul Malmat is driving, though, he's more than 5 seconds clear of XL Dylan at this moment in time. He is looking very good to take a victory here for QVR and just consolidate that they have been the class of the field this entire season.
Yeah, doing a brilliant job at this point in time. Larkin's actually dropped back a little bit now from Jules on that previous lap. I don't know if there was a mistake, whether he just doesn't want to run in the dirty air, but he's not quite as close as he was a lap ago. It's 1.3 seconds. Dylan has taken a chunk of time out of Larkin on that previous lap, over a second faster than his teammate. So Dylan catching back up to this queue quite nicely. Dylan, it seemed, got a little bit shafted in the pit stops. He was right up behind Yorma Matt when they came into the pit lane. He didn't speed, and it looks like he's maybe been held up either in the pit lane because he was double stacking with Yorma Matt, or he just got held up by other people coming in the pit lane behind him. Either way, the man that was in second has dropped to fourth, and you can clearly see that he's trying to push up to the back of the guys in front to regain those places. Cortez in the wet at least looks like it might be a little bit of a cork in the bottle this time around. He's got Noisy right up behind him.
Yeah, Noisy right on the back of him, but without any DRS, as Jules has retired in the pit lane. So that means, if we're just going to do some quick maths and look at the standings, VER are only 4 points behind Leonis. So all Jules has to do is finish this race, and they will finish in that 6th place and secure their League 1 spot. I can't imagine if I was in charge of Leonis Academy, I wouldn't be happy with both of my drivers retiring in the pits when a position that depends which championship you're going to be in is on the line. It has been a bit of a nightmare for Joel and Zach in this race. The other Zach, T1000 Zach, he was catching up to the back of Noisy, but that seems to have stopped all of a sudden. That gap now at about 2.5 seconds. Noisy's looking very pacey indeed. Just can't use it with the awkwardness and losers of a car almost in the dirty air behind Cortez. That shows you how much he is pushing at this moment in time. The rain's starting to come down a bit heavier, but we're still a long way away from any possible change to full wet tyres.
Yeah, quite a way away. We've just got to keep an eye now on how these drivers are able to hold on to their intermediates. If they're able to hold on to their intermediate tyres, it's going to be a real struggle, and we know it from past races as well. The advantage of a fresh set of intermediate tyres is quite big on this game. It is quite a big advantage that you can get. So anyone that might pit for a second time onto a set of intermediate tyres could get a massive undercut in these conditions. Is Noisy close enough to think about a challenge? He just can't get the power down out of Zheng Xiao. This corner, turn 14, does become a little bit more tricky in the wet. This time around it's easily flat, but without the use of DRS, he just can't get close enough in a straight line to the back of Cortez. In fact, Cortez almost pulling away from him in a straight line down the pit straight there. So Noisy is going to have to hope either for a mistake from Cortez or think about a move somewhere else on the track. It's fairly easy to make moves stick in the middle part of the lap. Larkin may be thinking about a move somewhere in the middle part of the lap now because he's re-caught to the back of Jules. Only 0.2 of a second behind. Larkin looking very strong in the wet. He's just got to try and find a way through. You've got to say, in these wet conditions, you can't really rely on getting a run down the pit straight or down the Retroposta. You kind of have to do it somewhere else and catch the other driver unawares.
Yeah, I think the situation they might be in is the cars ahead have gone for a bit more of a dry setup, a faster in a straight line, which is obviously the main overtaking part in Formula 1 with the way it is in 2020 and these cars with the dirty air. The best place to overtake is in a heavy braking zone, but they're not quicker than the cars in front there. They're not close enough to the car. Where they are quicker than the cars is in these twisty bits where it's very difficult to overtake. So whether you think about maybe a move into Pico de Pato, it is possible if the car ahead has a bad run through Pinarino, maybe even into Young Zhao, but I think you'd need a car in front to have a bad run through Magulio. It's going to be very difficult for us to see any overtakes. They're not doing too bad times at the moment. In fact, I said the rain looked to be getting a bit heavier. I think that was just because we were caught in the spray of the car in front. I think the rain stopped completely here. We'll be seeing a move to dry tyres shortly.
It has, yeah. I just noticed that as well. It has completely stopped. Wow, that's very interesting. We've just had basically a brief rain shower. I've never really seen anything like that in this game. That is a very quick end to the wet conditions, and Larkin basically pushing Jules through the middle part of the lap here. He's got so much more speed, trying to find a way through. Oh, and there's contact! He goes to the left-hand side. Jules was clear of Larkin. They just hooked front ring to rear wing. Jules is able to keep going. That is crucial, that he's able to keep going. But Dylan now trying to go around the outside. Jules getting very aggressive in his defence. But on the intermediate tyres, Jules just has not got any pace at all. Both XL drivers are now through up into second and third, but Larkin has gone from being about 3 seconds behind Yorma Matt to nearly 7 seconds behind just in a few laps.
Yeah, and that was a very similar incident to what took out the other VER driver as well, with drivers just moving across, not realising how far alongside the car ahead was and just making a bit of contact. So yeah, Jules very lucky indeed that he could catch that car, very lucky that the barrier is a bit further away at that part of the circuit. And I wonder now that the track is starting to dry out, whether we're going to see a bit more pace from VAR Jaws. All that though, Yul Malmat 7 seconds ahead. He is loving things at this moment in time. All this intermediate period's done is really spread the field out. And now looking at the setups that we saw everyone do earlier, it wouldn't surprise me if the game didn't really forecast this rain at any point in the race, and they only found out when they went into the race, and it comes up with the 7 blocks rather than the 3 in qualifying.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Like I mentioned, I've never really ever seen anything like this in the game where you just have a very brief rain shower in the middle of the race. That is very, very uncommon. So now it's a case of what these drivers do in terms of tyre strategy from here on out. It's nearly almost drying out at this point in the race. From this point onwards, you could take a set of softs to the end of the race. It isn't impossible. It depends whether you've used all your set of softs in qualifying or whether you've got a fresh set to use still. Well, even if you're confident on the softs, you may want to go for a set of mediums just so you can get them to the end. I think Yulma Matt can go for softs or mediums at this point in the race. He's got such a gap at the front of the field that I don't think it would really pay too much difference for him in this race. His only problem is that 5-second penalty that he will have to serve in his pit stop. That could put Dylan close enough to the back of him, but Dylan's going to still be at least 3 seconds behind after that pit stop phase. So we'll keep an eye out for that and how that one pans out. Noisy's still stuck a little bit behind Cortez. Zach is once again starting to re-catch. I think it's just starting to ebb and flow really because of the difference in conditions. It seemed in the actual intermediate conditions that T1000 Zach was confident. As soon as it dried up and they're on basically a dry track on intermediate tyres, T1000 Zach has upped his pace once again.
Yeah, he has indeed, and we've got the first driver to roll the dice here, Scuderia Seb. We've seen him towards the front of the field quite often this season, not having the best race here, but he might get himself up to the top 10 if this is the best idea. Onto the soft tyres, 14 laps on fresh softs, will get yourselves to the end of the race. Felgen coming into the pits as well with a speeding penalty, serving the previous speeding penalty, and Chris coming in as well. So, looking at the cars, there's not a lot of spray coming off these tyres now. I don't think we're too far off the slick tyres being the right tyres to be on. Jaws was definitely sliding around the lap before. And there we go, DRS enabled. We should see now, I imagine, pretty much every single car coming into the pits for a set of those soft tyres. And is Scuderia Seb going to be the man this time who makes the gains in a similar fashion to what Jaws did earlier?
Definitely looks like it's going to be that case as all of the drivers at the top 4 are into the pit lane. Then no one has sped this point in time anyway. Jules nearly into the back of Dylan on the way into the pit lane, but gets away with it. Cortez and Noisy both into the pit lane as well. Cortez is the one that speeds this time around. That is going to pay dividends for his battle with Noisy. Everyone in then, Yulmamat on a set of softs, as you would expect. You would expect pretty much everybody here to be on a set of soft compound tyres. It all depends now for Scuderia Seb, where he comes out relative to this battle. He was behind Matt Tibos, I believe, on the road in a net 11th place, so keep an eye out for that, whether he stays in that similar position. Everyone then on the soft compound tyres. Yulmamat leads now by about 3 seconds. Dylan back up into that second place, now having the other drivers around him having served that penalty. Larkin back down to third with Jules right behind. Cortez in fifth, but does have a penalty looming over him. And unfortunately for Noisy's had a really slow pit stop for some reason.
Yeah, he has, down in 9th place, when you consider he was on the back of Cortez. Whether he's first car in the garage, maybe the Mercedes syndrome that we've seen a few times happen in fact F1 Esports, where drivers were getting held up in the pits. But Noisy, yeah, 9th position, that has not worked out for him whatsoever. But he has shown some pretty decent pace in this race. We'll see if he can close up to the drivers ahead, get ahead of them. Still might get ahead of Cortez after penalties in the end of this race. We'll have to wait and see. Dylan, obviously a big winner in all that pit stop period, not having a penalty. Scuderia Seb is now ahead of Matt Tibos, got both of the International Racing Team cars in the top 10. We'll see if Jules can fight on Larkin. He was pretty quick earlier on the back of... I think earlier on, actually, it was Dylan who was all over the back of Jules. We'll see whether Jules can get one over on an XL driver this time around. But Yul Malmat, 12 laps to go. Tyres should last comfortably towards the end of the race. He's just got to keep a cool head now.
Yeah, he just has. It's all now really down to Dylan and what pace Dylan has. Can he close in? Yulmamat can kind of just cruise at this point onwards. He's got a nice, comfortable lead as it stands. Further down the field, Rudy on the back of B. Morgan for 7th place. Not quite close enough. Going down into Desida de Largo. Stays in 8th place for the time being. Scuderia Seb did manage to jump Matt Tibos and is up into the top 10. But Matt Tibos right back behind him in that 11th place within DRS range. Noisy trying to get within DRS range of Rudy and B. Morgan in front. T1000 Zach up another place with that slow pit stop for Noisy. It's been a little bit of a race under the radar for T1000. Zach in 6th place at the moment, steadily gaining places without really passing anybody on track so far. It's kind of all been in the pit lane that he's made those overtakes work. But on this lap alone, at least, he's not actually able to close in on Cortez. In fact, Cortez is starting to close in a little bit on Jules in front.
Yeah, Cortez obviously thinking about the penalties here. He would drop behind Zach. He would just drop behind Morgan at this moment in time. But things are very close between them. QVR, all 4 of their drivers are in the top 7. We've seen this a few times. Their academy team, towards the end of the season, has had a really good end, led by Cortez and a few other people that he's had alongside him. Although we might just see Morgan drop down soon, because Rudy has had a pretty good exit there. And there's been a spinner further back, and that is Matt Tibos.
Yeah, I wonder if that's contact with the side of Scooter close on track. There's no damage on his end at least, but that is another spin in this race for Matt Tibos. What could have been for him? Poor qualifying. He had great pace earlier on before the wet conditions came, but that contact, I think it was with Zach maybe at the time, has really put pay to what could have been a great race for Matt Tibos. Rudy couldn't find a way past B Morgan on that lap. He was just kind of sticky within range of B Morgan. B Morgan though very close to D rating, so I think once Rudy gets close enough out of Young Shao, it's going to be a pretty easy move for the international racing driver. Noisy has caught the back of these guys as well, with more ERS than both of them I think combined at this point in the race as well. So Noisy looking really good in that 9th place to possibly gain a couple spots as Yulmo Matt sets the fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, he's just looked so good in all conditions pretty much in this race. Rudy is going to be right on the back of B Morgan here. He's going to have to go the long way round, but should still be fairly straightforward with the DRS. And there we go, job done, 7th place. B Morgan almost outbreaks himself into the back of the IRT car. He's got to try and just hang in there now. He's going to have the DRS. That will help him defend from Noisy, but if he drops outside that 1 second, he's got a lot less ERS than the TTG Academy driver, so that could lead to Morgan dropping down even more places. It wasn't the most fantastic of qualifyings, I don't think, from the IRT team, but Rudy's gone up 1 position so far. Scooter via Seb has gone up 3 positions. It's just this consistency that has helped them pretty much be best of the best. They never really looked like winning the championship, but they are going to come home in a very comfortable 4th position.
Yeah, they started off this championship as OSRL, didn't have the best first round. I think they were 9th after the first round of the season, but since they've rebranded to the International Racing Team, they really have upped themselves in performance. It's been a great run of form from the International Racing Team, doing a good job, solid in that 4th place. XL Dylan now the fastest man on the track, but was only 2/10 faster than Young Matt on that previous lap. That is not enough to close back in. Larkin has broken DRS to Jules as well, so it's all starting to spread out just a little bit inside that top 4. The top 5 as well. T1000 Zach still can't find a way to close in on his teammate on track at least, but he will still be within penalty range of his teammate as it stands for the time being. Rudy not quite within range. He just needs to find a couple of tenths to be there. But B Morgan, since being overtaken, looks fairly comfortable up behind the international racing driver. So maybe B Morgan thinking that it's the better opportunity to maybe sit behind Rudy, save a bit of ERS, and then re-attack him later on in the race.
Yeah, and I think that would be a very wise thing to do. He's on a very similar amount of ERS to Rudy, and I think he knows if he goes too early and starts battling too much between them, he'll lose time to Zach up ahead, he'll lose time to Cortez, who does have that penalty, and these drivers could still beat Cortez at the end of this race, and he might let Noisy by as well. So all the things that they've got to think about at this moment in the race. This is the main battle out on track. Top 7 positions, at least in terms of the order they'll cross the finish line, look pretty much sorted. You've got this freeway battle, you've got Matt Tibos trying to get onto the back of Corboy, but that wet period really did spread the field out.
It really did, yeah, and I think it just again proves the power of the DRS trends as B Morgan, I think, is actually thinking about a move here on Rudy to the inside line. Jules has picked up a time penalty in that 4th place, but no one's within range at the moment of stealing that 4th place. B Morgan thought about a move, wasn't close enough to go for the dive, but he's on the ERS through Curva de Sol and down the Reta Raposta. Can he get to the inside line for turn 5? He's run out of ERS completely. Rudy's going to leave him the inside line. B Morgan late down the inside. Rudy going to hold it around the outside of turn 4 to the outside of turn 5 as well. Rudy's just going to hold the position, and B Morgan just drifts into the side of him. That is open door. Early Christmas present for Noisy. It's come half the year early. Again, we've seen drivers kind of drift towards one another. This time around, B Morgan just drifting to the outside, clipped Rudy's rear wheel. They both ended off the track, and Noisy gets 2 places in 1.
And again, that could have been pretty much a carbon copy of what happened a few laps ago in the wet, which was almost a carbon copy of what happened on lap 1 of the race. Does no one here realise how wide these Formula 1 cars are and what happens when you start interlocking the wheels? Noisy, he had the wisest idea. Be close to that battle to take advantage, but not too close that when they do make contact, you end up getting taken out. He's in 7th place. Such a shame for him, obviously, that he had that trouble in that pit stop period, because if not, he'd probably he'd be close enough to Jules, perhaps, to be challenging for that position after penalties.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like he could have been close enough, like I say. I think now he's got to try and get within range of Cortez and hopefully try and catch T1000 Zach maybe before the end of the race. In terms of dry pace, Noisy seems to have had the advantage over Zach in this race, so we'll see what he can do. B Morgan has lost DRS. That little battle there, that little contact, has kind of spoiled this little battle that was going on because they've all spread out once again. Scooter Recep has also got past his teammate. I would imagine in Rudy's camp he's not feeling too happy about that move from B Morgan. He was completely on the curb on the exit of turn 5. B Morgan just drifted kind of into him and they made contact. There was not really much Rudy could have done in that situation to avoid that incident other than be further ahead coming out of the corner. The only drivers really within DRS range, apart from the two teammates, are Corboy and Matt Tibos for 11th and 12th. Like you mentioned, that wet period really has spread the field out completely. No one within DRS range. And like I mentioned earlier on, it kind of proves the fact that DRS trains around this track and on this game are incredibly vital, because as soon as you lose DRS, it's pretty difficult to close back in.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen quite a few cars make contact as well and drop back. Matt Tibos and Zach were other ones. In fact, Matt Tibos is going to go down the inside here of Corboy. I think both TTG main dream drivers have made moves on that last lap, so he's up into 11th. His teammate Fis down in 14th, but did just get ahead of Daniel. Matt's trying to recover from that spin earlier on, of course. I wonder now, going back to the B Morgan, Noisy, Rudy and Scuderia Seb, now that B Morgan's dropped out of the side of DRS range and hasn't got a lot of ERS, I wonder whether there's a chance here for Seb to get himself into the top 8. Yeah,
definitely possible. Scuderia Seb, one of those drivers that pops up at the end of the race, having been a little bit invisible throughout the entire event, pops up at the end of the race with a pretty decent result. He's done that a number of times this season. Again, in the top 10 for the International Racing Team. He's nearly within that DRS range. That DRS detection zone runs just outside of turn 13, which is just here. Scooter Recep, I think, is just within it, so he might have it, or he might have missed out on it. No, he does have it. So Scooter Recep has got DRS on B Morgan this time around. Can close back in, and B Morgan has no ERS at this point in the race to his name, so that's going to really cost him in a straight line. Noisy is absolutely flying. He's already 2.2 seconds clear of B Morgan, and he's only 1.4 behind T1000 Zach. He's closing in on the back of the Zach very quickly and is back within penalty range of Cortez 5th.
Yeah, he's doing a fantastic job, Noisy. I've got to say, he's really been a bit of a revelation in this race with the pace that he's had. If this is an audition to get yourself in the main TTG team, it's not a bad place to be doing it. It's a track that tests out a lot of different things. He's in 7th place. Like you said, he will get Cortez on the penalties by about 1.5 seconds. Whereas a few laps ago he was outside of that range. He might get ahead of Zach. Earlier on we thought he might have a half chance of getting a podium. It's not going to be, but a top 5 definitely on the cards here. And Scuderia Seb has got back within DRS range of Morgan, and he's dragging along Rudy with him. So the QVR Academy driver could find himself getting ambushed by IRT very shortly.
Yeah, revenge. I think round 2 here for the International Racing Team versus B Morgan. Scooter Recep with much more ERS. I think maybe just waiting for the right moment. You can see B Morgan derating in a straight line and just losing pace as he runs up the hill towards the centre S. It's just not got any straight line speed. That's one thing about this track. It's fairly difficult to manage ERS when you're out on your own. When you're in a queue in a DRS train, it's pretty easy. But when you're on your own, it's pretty impossible to get back within that kind of 20% range so that you're not derating. Scooter Recep maybe doesn't have the raw speed over B Morgan, but in a straight line has a lot more pace. He just gets closer and closer and closer, and Rudy is right there as well. And who knows, anything could happen in this battle for 8th place. Matt Tibos could still be right in this one towards the end of proceedings. Noisy is also nearly within DRS range of T1000 Zach. At the pace that he is running, it's a shame that, like you mentioned, he had that poor pit stop, because he's much faster than T1000 Zach at this point in the race, and Cortez, and Jules as well. He's got the pace on Jules. I think Noisy at this point in the race is the 4th or 5th fastest person on the track if we include Chris, down in 14th place. A podium could definitely have been on for this man, and he has managed to get within DRS range of T1000 Zach, so it's on for 5th place in the race now for Noisy.
Yeah, it is definitely on, and just hearing Sway say in the chat that he will actually be in the main team. His fastest lap in this race for Noisy has been a 108.710, which does make him overall pretty much the sixth, I think, fastest driver. There's drivers ahead of him. Cortez and Zach haven't even done a 108 in this entire race, and Noisy's still pumping in 108.9s on the previous lap, so he's putting in some good performances here. Scuderia Seb further back has gone ahead of B Morgan, so that is Seb up into 8th place. Another sort of under the radar performance from himself, just doing a very good job. Rudy's actually dropped a bit back from these two drivers. 2 and a bit laps to go. We are now starting to see a few more moves, I think, as the drivers realise it's the final race of the season. We might as well go for it. We're not gonna lose anything, I don't think, from going for a move here, and obviously wanting to put on a good show.
Yeah, wanting to set themselves in for next season as well, creating a good impression. And like you mentioned, Noisy is putting in a good impression at TTG at the moment, looking to be promoted to the main team next season. That would be great for him and his confidence. Currently in that 7th place, not close enough to the back of Zach this time around to think about a move. We've got 2 laps to go, 4 DRS straights, and T1000 Zach is D-rating, so Noisy does have a small ERS advantage very late when the brakes into turn 1 that time around was. Noisy's got a lot of confidence on the brakes. B Morgan, is he going to think about a re-go at Scuderia Seb for 8th place in this race, or is he just going to sit there and wait until the final lap of the race? Scuderia Seb himself is D-rating, but B Morgan just not close enough in that 9th place to think about repassing Scuderia Seb for that 8th place. A lap and a half to go. We haven't really talked about our top 3 since the pit stops. It's just been fairly status quo at the front of the field. Joel Matt still leads by 2.8 seconds. It was 3 seconds when they left the pits. Dylan's gained 2 tenths in the space of about 11 or 12 laps. There's not really been any pace advantage or disadvantage for any of these drivers. It's just they got spread out in the pit lane. It's a shame that they got spread out in the wet conditions, and the penalties played a big factor in this race in the end, didn't it? Larkin could have had a great shot of winning this race, but that speeding penalty for him really put pay to what could have been a fight for the win.
Yeah, definitely. Shame for him. Shame Dylan had a bit of a bad start to this race, I believe, as well, because that seemed to cost him. We've got some yellow flags further back, but whoever it was does seem to have recovered. I wonder if it was Matt Tibos. Rudy right on the back of B Morgan, and final lap of the race. He's going to be all the way around the outside before we get to the centre Esters, and that is Rudy through, following in the footsteps of his teammates a lap ago, up into 9th place. B Morgan, he just struggled with his ERS usage in this final stint, and I think struggled maybe a bit with tyre life as well, and that's what's caused him to drop down the field. As Noisy,
oh, he went for the move down the inside of T1000 Zach, wasn't fully really alongside him, kind of sent one late down the inside, and T1000 Zach gave him no space on the inside. That's Noisy then. What could have been at least a 6th place finish, that late dive on him hasn't worked. He's going to send it down the inside of B Morgan and back up into P9. That was a very aggressive send down the inside to at least gain one of those places back. It's the final race of the season, just trying to get any result, but Yulbel Matt has led pretty much from start to finish, and he wins the final round of the season. QVR finish as they meant to have started. It is another win for them this season, their 4th win of the season. It's a double podium for Excel. They more than secure that 2nd place in the standings. Jules with the 4th place finish means that Virtual Esports Racing will be in League 1 next season. Leonis Academy will only be in League 2. A brilliant performance from Jules in the end. T1000 Zat does get a top 5 after that penalty for Cortez. Scuderia Seb ends up in 7th ahead of Rudy getting 8th. They benefited nicely from those last lap shenanigans. Noisy ends up 9th, and B Morgan rounds off the top 10. Final race of EML is finished. It's been 10 months in the making. The season, though, is sadly over, and QVR have finished as they started, race winners.
Yeah, great performance there from Yol Malmak, carrying on where we've seen, I think, Kuhnblai, Verstappen and Campbell have been some of their main drivers so far this season. On occasions, other teams have challenged them. M Short especially comes to mind for Excel, Perpetuum coming to mind for Team TTG, just didn't have the same consistency, and that's why QVR won the championship with a round to spare, and then probably, I think, well, close to getting the most points tonight, but definitely claiming that victory. Another good performance by Excel as well, getting both teams on the podium. All preparations now ready for next season, of course, on the new F1 game.
Yeah, the new F1 game that comes out in about a month and a half time, not long to go. The betas are now out as well for a lot of people, so we're nearly into that season, that next game season already. It feels like we've only been on this game for about 3 months, and we're already at the end of the cycle. But that is the first season of EML League 1 over and done with, and it's Yulmel Matt in his first race in the season wins on his first time out. That is a brilliant drive, a dominant drive from him from start to finish. Dylan with second place and picks up the fastest lap by 0.003 of a second. That was very, very close, but Dylan gets the fastest lap at least. That is something for him to take away from what's been a great result again for Excel in second and third, ever the consistent team they are. Jules in fourth there, the T1000, Zach in fifth, the QVR 1-5. Cortez for the Academy team, making a big name for himself to maybe be promoted into the main team next season. He's had a brilliant run of form in the final few rounds. He finishes sixth there. The Scooter Seb and Rudy for International Racing Team, who solidify that fourth in the standings. Noisy in ninth there. The B Morgan in the other Academy team for QVR in 10th. Matt Tibos, what could have been for him today. He had great pace. What could have been for TTG as a whole today. It just didn't work out for them. Callboy in 12th for the Academy team ahead of Felgen, the lead OWR driver. Chris, who had that contact at the very first lap at turn 3, had great pace, just wasn't in the right place at the right time and wasn't able to show it. Nordboy, the final finisher for OWR. Jill, Zach, Shender, your 3 retirements from this race. Leonis Racing with 2 retirees means that they will not be in League 1 next season. They will be in League 2. And that is it. That is Championship over. And before we finish off the stream, and before we finish off the season, who was your driver of the day, and what are you looking forward to for next season, Luke?
I'm going to go Yulmel Matt for the driver of the day, but if it hadn't have been for that spin on the final lap, I'd have gone for Noisy, because it was just such a good performance towards the end of that race. What I'm looking forward to is we are going to have some new teams, so it's going to be a qualifying night to determine who is going to get into League 1 and League 2. I'm just looking forward to seeing what the next game does, looking forward to seeing what moves in teams are going to happen as well. We've already talked about moves between Academy and main teams. Are some drivers going to swap teams completely, of course, in our own little mini silly season? And yeah, can't wait to see what EML Season 2 has in store for us.
Yeah, keep an eye out for more information on email as we get closer to the next game cycle. The next game, obviously, like I mentioned, out in about a month and a half's time. Follow EML on Twitter for all the latest news about the EML Championship. Obviously, follow League Racing TV on Twitter as well. Follow us on YouTube. We're getting closer and closer to that 1,000 subscriber level for League Racing TV. That would be amazing if we could reach that by the time we start the next game cycle. That would be absolutely amazing for League Racing TV. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. That is it, though, for the first season of the Esports Masters League League 1 division. Tune in about 5 minutes time for the start of the final round of the season for the Premier division. There is still a title fight going on for that one. Leonis looking like they could pick up the title for the Premier division. So look out for that one. That will be commentated over by James Head and Kieran McGinley, who is back for a one-off performance in that commentary box. That is going to be great to watch. That is sure to be a great end to the season. Thank you so much, though, to Luke for joining me in the commentary box tonight. Thank you to you guys for watching. Thank you to all the teams as well for competing this season. It's been an absolutely brilliant debut season of EML, and I cannot wait for Season 2. From myself and Luke, though, it is thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.